All right, welcome back, everybody. Some of the topics we get to talk about on the show, we get from within the Shift community, which is the community that Ori and Brittany run. We get a lot of good questions in there, and we try to bring those out for the rest of the podcast audience whenever possible. But we did our second trip to Bentonville, Arkansas. Well, hell, it was a week ago today. I think we were all flying home. It was our third get together, but our second trip to that little town for a million reasons that we don't need to get into. It's the home of Walmart. It's oddly fancy. It's like a utopia. It's in the middle of nowhere. There's no body of water. The weather's not all that great, but there's all these multi-million-dollar homes in the middle of Arkansas, or like in the corner of Arkansas, Northwest Arkansas, they call it. And it doesn't make a lot of sense other than Walmart corporate is there. So there's a lot of money in that town. But anyway, wonderful little town. But what I was getting at is that trip leading up to it for about 2 months, I was pretty strict with my diet and exercise. I wasn't drinking. I don't think I drank for weeks leading up to it. And then, as to be expected, we ate whatever we wanted, drank whatever we wanted, or at least I did anyway. So it was a work trip, but it wasn't one of those things. I'm like, hey, I'm going to do what I feel like doing at any given time. And what I found was coming back that worked this time to kind of bring myself back into my routine instead of beating myself up and saying, we get back on a Tuesday, Wednesday morning, I'm going to start with my diet, my exercise, and do all the things in one day. What I did this time, healthy or not, is the day afterwards, I let myself I wanted a cheeseburger. I went and got a cheeseburger. I wanted a couple of beers. I had a couple of beers. And then over the course of 3 days, I was able to easily come out of not being so healthy. And I know some would say that maybe I'm prolonging it, but now I feel great. And I'm back on my diet. I'm exercising. I haven't had a drink in a few days. I just don't feel like it. Like I feel good. And I don't think I would have been able to sustain that had I told myself, all right, you're back tomorrow morning. It's on. I just don't think that's realistic. And I know that doesn't work for everybody, but it kind of reminded me of things with like the 12-step program and other things where it's like, it's all or nothing. Like you can't do this. And I found that, this would apply to any habit, not necessarily going on a trip and eating and drinking too much, although a lot of people do that when they go on vacations. They all overindulge. They get home. They feel bad because they haven't been the healthiest for the last X amount of days. Then they're angry at themselves because they can't get back into their routine and they're just miserable. And it really worked this time to I'm not going to beat myself up. I'm just like, okay, it's okay. As long as you're progressing. And then by the third day, I was like, okay, I'm ready to be healthy again. So anyway, I thought that was an interesting way to do it when I got back. And it worked this time.
And I want to kind of just hit on that because that is a huge difference for me. And first and foremost, I just want to say how proud I am of you of the fact that this is what happened for you. Because to me, that is a very telling story. We went to Bentonville and obviously we were planning on drinking there. We were planning on eating there, whatever it was. And so the first days that we got there, day one, I remember, we had we lit Sambuca in our mouths, whatever it was, we did our wild and crazy stuff, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I realized that by day three, all of a sudden, it's like I wasn't drinking at all. I was just drinking my water and my electrolytes. And instead of having the pizza, I was just, I'll have the salad, whatever it was. And I was still going a little bit crazy, but at the same time, I went back to my norm. And that is a statement that makes a big difference. What is your norm? Where is it that you live on a consistent basis? And most people that try and make a change, they still see that change as being a sprint. I'm going to go off and I'm going to do all these things today, and then my life is going to be good from this point forth. Whereas the truth is, if you really consider what you're doing to be a lifestyle change, don't expect you to be perfect every single moment of every single day, right? So I went to Bentonville, I went crazy, and it was perfectly fine for me to do. Now I got some pounds to lose, and I know I'm going to lose them because I'm going to go back to my normal lifestyle, which is going to be perfectly fine. And because I trust in the fact that this is who I am, I don't need to beat myself up over doing things crazily, right? So you came back from Bentonville and you just said, you know what, I feel like having a cheeseburger because I'm still in that momentum. And then you had the cheeseburger, and then the other part of your brain where you've already shifted sits there saying, but do you know what? I also kind of miss having water instead of a beer. So I'm just going to have a water too. And then on day two, you all of a sudden say, do you know what? Instead of having the cheeseburger, I'm going to do that other thing because it left me feeling really good. And then you say, I'm going to have that healthy, I'm going to have a wrap instead of a bun, whatever it is around my burger. And within 3-4 days, your changes are back to normal because at the end of the day, you are the person that's changed. The difference, and I know we've spoken about it before, are you a fat person trying to lose weight? Or are you a naturally thin person that is doing some bad things that just naturally will fall away from you? Are you an alcoholic that's trying to not drink anymore? Or are you generally a non-drinker that can go off and have a few drinks here and there and it's not a big deal? And that difference makes such a big difference. And if you can lock that in your head in terms of discovering the identity of who you are, of I am a naturally healthy person, and you lock that into your head, you can go off and you can do unhealthy things. And if you don't beat yourself up and you don't let that momentum carry you to such a degree that it takes you to that new reality, then what happens is you can have some bad days and you go back to where you were. You go back to your natural self of, you know what, like I could keep doing that, but quite honestly, like I have worse sleep. I feel like shit. I got a hangover the next day, and it doesn't really make that big a difference anymore. I'm just going to stop doing those things. The biggest thing here that I want to say is, obviously with all those different lessons in there, is how proud I am of you, of the fact that obviously you've made a shift at such a deep enough level that your natural way of being is just going back to being the healthy person. And that is huge.
And that's how I felt, actually. I mean, you did a better job of explaining like what was going on in my head, because I came back and I could see it. Like, I'm one of those people that I have a round face, and whenever I have too much salt, now it doesn't even have to be beer or anything. It could be I have a bag of potato chips, and then my face will swell up. So I came back and I'm looking in the mirror and I'm walking by, and I'm assuming a lot of men don't do this, but maybe they do. But I'm walking by storefronts and I can literally see myself fatter from my profile as I'm walking downtown here in Galveston. And in the past, what I would have done is, like, yeah, you're fat idiot, whatever. This time I just kind of laughed it off. I'm like, yeah, but I know in a week or so I'll be back down to before. And it was a lot easier to snap back into it. And I know we talked about it a little bit during the holidays, but people go on vacations all year round. But what some people do, and actually you did a really good job of this, is being able to midpoint through the trip start adjusting slowly, incrementally, kind of bringing it down. I'm not one of those people. I'm one of those people that, and for whatever reason, and I enjoy this. I'm not going to change this. I like to. The last night has to be the craziest night. Now that's been miserable a lot of the times, because usually the last night on a trip is the night before you have to either be up early or you have to pack, and nobody likes traveling hungover or just not feeling well, whether you're a drinker or not. But so when most people go on vacation, even though this wasn't like quote unquote vacation, it's hard to tell somebody who has 2 weeks vacation per year. It would be tough advice to give, to say, all right, now day 8 into your 14-day vacation, I need you to go back to your normal, because nobody's going to do that. Let's be honest. I mean, they're at an all-inclusive resort, whatever the case may be. I know people that do it over the holidays, where they try to actually go into the holidays and lose weight. And I feel like they're missing something there. I feel like they're not enjoying themselves as much. So
I completely agree, but I just want to comment about the fact that it doesn't need to be that way. I didn't do this because I was like, oh gosh, you know what? The trip is going to end in 3 days' time and I'm going to have to go back to my normal life. To me, the trip was really fun. Those few days I went kind of crazy. And then all of a sudden I started realizing the fact I'm not feeling so good. And the difference is, in neurolinguistic programming, it's all that you kind of look at a person as a conglomeration of programs, that the brain is basically running different programs. And when you look at the program of a naturally healthy person, or a naturally thin person is one that we do, that this was actually modeled from. It's called the naturally slender eating strategy. What they do is they do the same things as a person that's overweight, that they look at food and they go, oh my God, that food looks so good and I want it. The only difference that happens for a person that's naturally slender is, in their mind, they imagine how much that they want to eat. The first thing that they do is they actually kind of say, do I want to have all that food on my plate, or do I just want to have some of it? And then the second thing, that's an even bigger thing, is that they ask themselves, and how will I feel an hour from now, 2 hours from now, or 2 days from now? And that difference is really the thing that makes a big difference. Because take any kind of pattern that you have, but let's go to a bit of a crazy one. Let's go towards drugs or alcohol, for example. Mm-hmm. I would love to try heroin. I think it would be a really amazing experience, right? It would be really, really amazing. Except in the back of my mind, there's still that little switch that goes off going, but if I were to do this, what's going to happen to me a week from now, a month from now, and a year from now? And my brain says, I know for me, I'll want to do it again in a week's time. And then all of a sudden I can start seeing all the different challenges that would do for me. So my brain just naturally says, I just don't want to do it. I don't want to go down that path. And obviously that's taking it to a real big extreme. But in the same way, when we were in Bentonville, and the first night I went crazy and I drank and I didn't really pay attention to consequences, and that was absolutely great. By day 2, I was sitting there going, I don't really feel that good. And I like feeling good. That's the way I'm built. So what am I going to do to make it different? Do you know what? I'm going to have a few more drinks of water along with alcohol. And by day 3, I'm like, I'm having just as much fun without the alcohol. I'm just not going to do it, right? Like and you guys were drinking whatever it was, and I was drinking my mocktails. I wasn't teased for it or anything else, and even if I was, it wouldn't really bother me too much. But
Right.
it just very easily is that shift. And so when a person goes into the holidays sitting there saying, "I've got to limit myself because I'm going to go crazy," what they're doing in that moment is that they're still stuck in the mindset of an overindulgent person trying to do something to change it. Whereas where your brain was and where my brain was the idea of like, I'm going to be overindulgent. I'm going to have the time of my life, but I'm a naturally thin person. I'm a naturally healthy person. And when that stops being the fun thing to do, I'm just going to shift back into the person that I want to be. So I can have a happier day. I can get more done during my days, whatever it is. And that difference makes the whole difference in the brain.
This is how I used to be all the time, meaning before it was much worse. Before it was much worse. Nobody, I could make an argument why everybody would want to hang out with that guy, why nobody would want to hang out with that guy. There were people that wanted to hang out with that guy, but they're not the
You
kind
were
of
the
people
life of the
we want
party, right? You were the
we
fun
definitely,
guy.
yeah, we don't want the people that used to want to hang out with that guy on that trip with us. But the what I know a lot of alcoholics suffer with this because a hangover or just not feeling well. I mean, it is a hangover, whatever the withdrawal, the come down off of alcohol is in the morning. Fortunately, it really does work to have a little bit more alcohol. Now you're prolonging it, but that it gives you that warm euphoric sense. Because I've had many mornings where I woke up and I'm just like, I can't get out of bed, and then I would have a little bit of champagne or a little bit of vodka, and all of a sudden you're just washed over with, okay, everything's fine. Now it's just kicking the
Okay.
can down the road, right? So it's going to hurt more
Yeah,
later. But the problem is it does work. So I actually have
it
a lot
does
of
work.
sympathy for alcoholics.
So the best way to get over a hangover is just stay drunk, right? Like and I get the
Mm-hmm.
concept of that. But then when you go into the theory of the naturally slender eating strategy, for example, is when you go into it, I mean, very easily for me, I could have done the same thing. Like, you know what? Like right now I'm kind of feeling like crap, but if I drink, I'll forget about feeling like crap. And the only thing my brain did different than a person that's stuck in that addictive tendency is my brain just said, but then I'll feel crap tomorrow. And now I've lost a whole day and I'm not going to be productive and I'm not doing all those things. And because I've associated enough joy to the things I would get done during that day, and because I've associated enough joy with the things I'll do when I feel better, what happens is my brain says, I'll take this hit. I'll have a bit of a hangover, and that is my cost for doing business yesterday, and it's perfectly fine. And it's just going to be okay. But now the difference is that your brain needs to really contemplate those differences. And inside the brain of an addict is the fact that the brain doesn't go further. It doesn't think any further. So it says, I feel terrible now. And the best way to stop feeling terrible now is to drink more. The best way to stop feeling terrible
Mm-hmm.
now is to have that next pain pill. And it makes perfect sense. The only difference is that like you said, you're just kicking that can down the road. You're going to feel twice as bad the next day. Whereas for me, like
Yep.
the thought that even goes in my mind is, if I don't drink today, tomorrow, if I do get drunk, it will be a larger euphoric high. So I could always do it again tomorrow. I'm not taking anything off the table, which is the thing that we discuss so much.
Mm-hmm.
If I want to drink, I drink. Today, I'm just choosing not to drink and I'll have the hangover. And then tomorrow, when it comes time to drink, my brain says, I really want to have a hangover the next day. Not really. And
Mm-hmm.
is it really going to make this experience that much better? Not really. You know what? I'm just not going to drink. That is really the difference that makes a difference.
And another interesting thing is that, again, this is all self-inflicted, but didn't help going into the last couple of days there. I had stopped caffeine before the trip. So here's another lesson. Here's another thing that people can take in, because before this trip, 60 to 70 days before the trip, I was going to the gym every single day. I was eating pretty clean every day. I didn't have any drinks. In my mind, I should have said, hey, just know how you're coming into this, because the older me that drank every day could have pulled the first night we got there, could have cracked open 8 beers while we were having a conversation. Nobody would have been able to tell the difference. It's like, okay, I would have brushed my teeth with that shit before we went out. It wouldn't have been that big of a deal. So I did make the mistake of, my brain was still set in what I thought my tolerances were from before the trip. Now that's not just with alcohol, but also with the caffeine, because I hadn't had caffeine for maybe a week, 9 days before. And then on our last day, I had a typical me. We went to the coffee shop, Brittany and I did in the morning, and I had one drink, one coffee, and my caffeine in it. I'm like, I don't really feel this one, so I'm going to go get a double espresso just to make sure. And then you guys saw me after that. I was like almost in a panic attack in my head anyway.
I take that even further, because the basic concept in anything really is if you put a drop of ink in dirty water, you're not going to notice very much, right? But if you
Right.
put a drop of ink in crystal clear water, you're going to see it spread, right? So if you've already polluted your body and you go and you put in a bit more pollution, it's not going to make a big difference. But you, and I'm very proud of you for doing it, went through a phase of cleansing yourself out. And now all of a sudden you did those different things and you felt the experience of putting the drop of ink into something that was crystal clear. And the lesson that I want you and so many other people to take away from this, and the lesson I felt on like day 2 of Arkansas that made me not want to drink, is now that you know what it really does to your body when your body is clean, you can now hold on to that experience. And next time you think about having caffeine, you're like, do I really want this? Right? Like, is this really what I want? Whereas when you're in the midst of everything in your system and you're basically just a trash can saying like, I'll have the 3 beers, I'll have the caffeine, I'll have the Adderall, whatever it is that your body feels like having in that moment, and you just go crazy, your body will accept it. But what you don't realize is the fact that your body actually is paying a very hefty price to do that. You don't notice it because you're just so polluted. But imagine what that's really doing inside of you. And you actually now know what that is doing inside of you because you now felt the difference. I want everyone to really hold on to that concept as much as possible, that when you experience the negative, hold on to it, not necessarily as a place of fear, but in terms of really understanding what the cost is to your body from a clean perspective. That tells you what's going on. So for me, for example, I know my weight on the scale on a certain level, and I know when I'm overweight, when I'm underweight, when I'm exercising well, when I'm not exercising well. And for me, I realized like on day 2 or 3 of Bentonville, it's just to describe the house to some people, it was just a 2-story house with like 20 steps from level 1 to level 2. And on like day 2 or 3, whatever it was, I walked up the 20 steps to get up to level 2, and I felt my chest tight and I felt like I wasn't breathing well. I'm like, what in the world is going on here? And I was like, I get it. I've been polluting my body and my body's not really using the resources right now to focus on fitness. It's using the resources to keep me awake and functioning on all the different things I need to do. I took that lesson. And then day 3, I was like, I don't want to feel crap when I walk up a set of stairs. Like that is not a natural, healthy thing to do. And so the lesson I want people to take away from this in a really big way in terms of human evolution is when life shows you how something is bad, accept it and learn from it, right? Like, I mean, like really see what that's about and understand the fact that this is something that you actually have control over in your choice the next time.
Yeah, for sure. And I've done that before and after this trip. Maybe I wasn't so good at it during the trip, but even afterwards, the days after I got back, and I actually did look I'd done this before, but I looked in the mirror and I was like, remember this feeling? I did it to myself. I'll give you a little bit of background on that. When I got back, again, like I said, I ate a cheeseburger the next day. I had a few beers the day after we got back. The second day after we got back, I think I had 2 beers. So I was still drinking, like tapering off, which honestly worked great. Like I didn't feel trapped, but I still, those next mornings woke up and I was like, I don't feel terrible, but I don't feel like I know how good I can feel. In the bathroom, I'm like, okay, like how good you normally feel. I remember that every time, no. But it did work a little bit. Like I said it to myself in the mirror. And as we get older too, we get used to how certain things feel. If I think hard enough right now, I can conjure up that feeling of, the alcohol, the hangover, like a little bit of anxiety, a little tightness, just kind of blah, kind of brain fog. This could apply to any other bad habit as well, especially overeating, things like that too. You know how, like you and Brittany always talk about, you can see a pack of Oreos, a sleeve, eat a couple of them, you're fine. Eat the whole thing. It feels really good in the moment. And then all of a sudden, you just feel terrible. And then hours later, you feel terrible. Then the next day, you beat yourself up because you had too many calories. It applies to everything. So what we want to kind of focus on today are strategies for people that go on trips and vacations. Could be short, could be long, could be with family, could be for work. But most of us, not all, but most people, when they go on either a work trip or a vacation, it's kind of a free-for-all, meaning I'm going to eat what I feel like eating. A lot of vacation destinations, whether it's all-inclusive or not, or even if you're just staying at a hotel somewhere for a long work weekend, you're going to have poor choices. You're going to be surrounded by it. And you should enjoy yourself and you should eat the things you want to eat and you should have drinks if you want to. The trick is how do you come out of that, not feeling like garbage as you're flying home to meet your family or having to, drive or fly? What are some things people could do for that last night to not be miserable on the return trip? Yeah.
So I want to take it even a little bit further than that, because I know we've discussed this before, but to me, this is one of the key components of becoming mature. And that's a big thing. It's, for me, the concept of what is really maturity when it's all said and done. When you're a child and you're not mature, what does that mean? you go off and you do whatever the heck you want, and you know that someone is going to pick up after you, right? Like your parents, you throw a rock through the window and you know mommy and daddy will end up having to pay for the neighbor's window, and you might get screamed at, whatever it is, but you're not really paying the consequences of those actions. At some point in time, someone needs to actually grow up and understand that maturity is when you understand that there's no one there that's going to be picking up after you. Of course, you're still surrounded by love and support. You're going to have a lot of things around you that will make your life easier. But at the end of the day, you are the sum product of your choices. And that is what maturity is. It's that concept of understanding the fact that any action you take, whether it's overeating, over drinking, taking a drug, whatever it is, take whatever action you want. I'm not here to tell you what to do and what not to do. Just understand that every single action carries with it a specific reaction. If you choose to exercise, there's going to be reactions of that. There's going to be a certain set of consequences of that action. If you choose not to exercise, there's certain consequences associated with that action. And I'm not telling you what to do. And I'm not saying go off and become a triathlete. And I'm not saying go off and become an alcoholic. All I'm saying is, and this is the thing that we discussed before, it's taking the idea of I'm going out with friends and I'm going to do whatever the heck I want, and just going into the place of just being completely reactive. Oh God, alcohol, let's do it. To just in that moment, putting in that little gap, which is the thing we discussed in the first few episodes, the little gap of a conscious choice, moving from reaction to response. And in that moment, all you say is, I could drink more, I could do all these things, but what is the consequence of me doing that? And that is a sign of maturity. That is truly, in my books, the sign of maturity. And so when it comes to holidays, if you know for a fact that for the first, let's say you're going away for a week, and for the first 5 days, you're going to be at home and you're going to be chilling and everything is good. And you know that you've done enough good in your life that basically that you've got enough good in your bank account that you can withdraw from it a bit. And you can go off and indulge crazily on the liquor or the alcohol or whatever it is, and you do it. If you make that a choice for the first 5 days, and you know that over those 5 days, you're probably going to exercise less, you're probably just going to be chilling on the couch, you're just going to be having fun and laugh and goofing around. And that's a choice you make. You go for it because you've chosen the consequences and you've directly chosen it. Now, the last 2 days, again, you're out with your friends and your friends are saying, hey, Lee, let's have one more drink, whatever it is. And in that moment, again, just don't be reactive is all I ask. In that moment, you say, what are the consequences of me having the drink today? And you say, well, if I have the drink today, tomorrow I've got to pack and I've got to actually do stuff. Whereas for the last 5 days, I was able to just sit on my butt on the couch and watch TV and do whatever it was. Now, tomorrow I've got to pack and I'm going to feel like crap the whole day tomorrow if I drink. Now you just make a choice. Are you okay with feeling like crap? If you are, do it. You are a mature adult. You get to do whatever in the world you want to do. And then the next day comes and you say, and your friends say, oh gosh, it's the last night. Let's go out and party. And then you say, okay, fine. Let's just think through the consequences. If I do it, I'm probably going to want to throw up in the middle of a transatlantic flight, or cross-country flight, whatever it is. You make the decision around that and you say, not a big consequence. I'm willing to do it. Go for it. You're an adult and you get to do it. The only thing I say, and I specifically even bought a domain around it called maturingmentally.com, is all I'm asking you to do is to become mentally mature, understanding the fact that every choice you make, you've got to live with those consequences. So make it a choice. Don't make it a knee-jerk reaction. So in terms of specific strategies, yes, your strategy makes perfect sense. Go crazy at the beginning because you don't have much to pay for it. And towards the end, you wean yourself down. But the way I do it to actually associate it with like a grander protocol that you can use in every area of your life, at every moment, just ask yourself, what are the consequences of these actions? If I choose to go to gym, what are the consequences of these actions? I'm going to have more energy during the day. If I choose to wake up at 4 a.m., what are the consequences of those actions? I'm going to be tired that day. If it's me, if it's you, for example, you might say, I'll be more productive. And the other part of that, and that idea is just know yourself enough by paying attention to, as you said, looking in the mirror after a week of going crazy and saying, I went crazy and I gained weight and I don't feel really good and I feel kind of crap. Now that you know that about yourself, you just associate that with your decision-making process. And I'm not saying you're going to get it right. The whole idea is each time you do it and you make a new decision, just store it away in your library of memories that the next time you can make a wiser decision using your history.
I kind of like the idea how simple it is to say, am I okay with being hungover tomorrow? It does give you enough pause to think like, oh, yeah, maybe. And it's a simple, stupid question, like if I eat all this or if I do all this.
Question that changes your life. The simple, stupid
it really
question that
does.
changes your life. What will happen tomorrow? That changes
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. Like, do I feel like driving tomorrow and feeling foggy? Do I feel like having to have caffeine in the morning just to bring myself out of something that I shouldn't have been in the first place? And then that causes a vicious cycle of caffeine anxiety and all the other things that snowball from there. There's one other thing I thought about when we're talking about drinking that works for me, if so long as I'm in my right mind and I'm, actually thinking about it. But what works for me in a group, because I have a tendency to drink very fast, if nobody's paying attention, including my brain, and I'm having a good time, whatever, I can have beer after beer after beer after beer. And again, that was how my system operated up until a few years ago. And I'll run through my morning checklist on a Saturday, for example. Get up in the morning, have champagne with the roommates, make a double Tito's, maybe triple Tito's, and orange juice or Sprite for the car ride, for the ride from the house in Riverland, which is not too far from the airport by you, downtown Fort Lauderdale. So anyway, we already shared a bottle of champagne, 10 in the morning. And we made a road drinks. It's illegal, but it's past the statute of limitations. Go ahead, come get me. Who cares? Drink on the way downtown. And then we arrived to the bar, 11 o'clock when they opened, pretty buzzed up already. And then I would drink beer all day, like all afternoon. And then usually at night, we would either go eat somewhere or go back to the house and crash. But point is, we're talking just the sheer volume of alcohol that my system could handle back then. Now, I'm not saying I wasn't drunk and sloppy by the end of the day, but I was still on my feet. I was still okay. I was talking, so I was functional. So anyway, my brain's still kind of trapped back in that, where if I'm not paying attention, if I'm not mindful, if I'm not paying attention to how many drinks are coming, then I'll be like, yeah, another beer, another beer, another beer. So what I found that actually works for me, depending upon what kind of group I'm in, if there's somebody in the group, and it's easy for me to find this because I'm such an animal. But if there's somebody in the group who drinks slower, I kind of treat them as a pace car. So let's say Chris or you or Brittany are only drinking so many drinks every whatever, like normal people drinking speed, Even if my brain is telling me, suck this drink down, chug this beer, if I'm like, I am only going to order one and when they get another one. Now, I'm not saying that saves everything, but it probably substantially cut down probably by about 70% on what I normally would have had in a normal sitting at a bar. If I finish my drinks earlier, I'll just put it down and wait.
So it does work. But the thing that I do take issue with that to some degree is the fact that I want people to have strategies that work in their lives. And I love the fact that that strategy works for you. What I want people to do more so is, and I'm happy to share those strategies, and I love the fact you shared it. But the thing I want to get even more so into people's minds is the idea of human evolution around this, in terms of the fact that I want you to really go into the idea of understanding how your brain and your body function. And at that point in time, come up with a strategy, absolutely fine. But more so, I don't want you to have to cheat through this. I want you to really evolve beyond it, right? Like it's so at that point in time, yes, you may choose a strategy because you've chosen to drink. And so you work through the strategy because you made that choice. But what I want you to do more so in terms of true human evolution is just make drinking the choice in the first place and then deal with it accordingly. And the thing I kind of want to also add into this is the fact that what you did when you were 20 isn't going to necessarily be what works for you when you're 40, 60, or 80, right? So it's when you're 20 and you've got a bunch of stem cells still in your system and your body is still healthy and you've polluted it, but the pollution hasn't taken full effect yet. It's possible that you can drink plenty and you can do everything and you won't yet. I remember when I was 20, and I think I've mentioned this before, I didn't think hangovers were a real phenomenon, right? Like it's just like it wasn't something that was really real for me. It's like I would drink and the next morning I'd wake up and feel great.
Yeah.
It's when you're 30 and 40, all of a sudden you realize the fact that there is a real consequence and there is a real cost to that. And to still treat your body like you did when you were 15 or 20 doesn't really make sense anymore because you're not paying attention to reality. Again, you're being immature by making a choice that a 20-year-old would have made. You don't do that when it comes to your finances. You don't do that when it comes to how you drive or anything else. And yet, nonetheless, when it comes to making a decision about drinking, you say, oh God, my body can handle it. I remember I did when I was 18. Absolutely possible. But the fact of the matter is, odds are you've changed and you've got to pay attention to where it is you are. So the one thing I want to add on to this is that in our group right now in the shift community, we actually have some people that are sitting there saying, like, do you know what? I'm following your advice and I step on the scale and I haven't lost a pound. And what's going on? Like, why is this going on? And the thing I want you to pay attention to is the fact that your body is still fighting off 25 years of abuse. I'm so happy you're doing everything right. I am so happy you're doing everything right. However, if you're still associated with the fact that this is going to be a short-term solution to fix you, you've completely missed the point here. You've completely missed the point here. The idea here is I want you to change who you are at such a fundamental level that the fact of the matter is you will lose weight. Whether it takes you a week, a month, or a year doesn't make a difference anymore. I want you to start gravitating towards being the naturally healthy, slender, non-alcoholic person that makes you happy. And if making you happy is drinking, and the fact that you say that that's perfectly fine, as long as it's a choice, go for it. But don't expect the fact that you are now doing things right for one day or a week or a month, that everything is going to shift on you. Like I gave an analogy before, you've got a polluted system. You first, before you do anything else, you have to unpollute the system. So now your body doesn't worry about the fact that it needs to just keep you alive. It can now focus in on having you thrive. And that difference makes a huge, huge difference. But like, again, to your point, I just want to say, I love the idea of the strategy, and I want people to have as many strategies as possible. But over and above that, if you get in your mind the idea of you get to make a choice, and your only strategy at any point in time is, if you can get to this level, and no one does, me included, but at any point in time, when you go to take that next sip, you go, what is the consequence of me taking this next sip? Mm-hmm. I'm not saying to take it down to a moment by moment level, but if you were to, you would never overindulge that quickly, because you would say, do you know what? Like I'm still feeling the results of the last sip. Let me just chill for a bit and chat with my friends. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to order an extra water, and it's like, if I got to hold something, I'll hold on to water and drink it. And then you say, okay, fine. Do you know what? I want another sip of my beer because I feel my high is getting a little bit lower. That to me is a healthy strategy that also works. But if you don't have that level of consciousness, and me included, like I said, I don't, having a pace car idea is absolutely great, but I don't want people to sit there and come up with just a strategy that is going against the idea of coming up with actually making a decision to drink.
No, absolutely. And it's a tough one too, because the more we drink, the more that inhibition. I could see, like, at the first couple of drinks, I could be like, okay, like, I'm choosing to do this, like, I'm thinking about it, like, do I have the buzz yet? And if I have it, and I've got a drink in front of me, like, why do I need to keep going until, you know what I mean? Like, instead of a lot of us, what we do is we get a buzz and then we're just like, oh, keep going. Well, that's not really reality. Reality is it would keep going on its own if you just left it for a little bit, maybe drink some water or something else. That's not what's going on in my head. And I think with having something, I call it the pace car thing. I think for me, it works well because I think a few drinks in, I'm not thinking so clearly. So that's what I'm like, hey, I need to at least follow this person over here.
And that makes perfect sense. Like, in terms of that makes perfect sense, because now what you've got is you've got an external mile marker that basically tells you how far you've gone. And I love that. Like, I mean, that really, really does make sense, especially when your brain is inebriated. Like, you've got something to basically use it. But and by all means, like I said, I don't want to poo-poo the strategy, because it's actually a very intelligent strategy. My strategy, for example, is just whenever I order a drink, I'll also order water, so I can definitely reach for one or the other. But the idea of a pace car for a person that just drinks too quickly, like you said, fantastically great idea. I just don't want people to lose sight of the fact that I don't want you to only come up with a strategy and not change at the deeper level along with it.
Be careful about water, because fish poop in the water. So just remember that next time you're drinking water.
Beer is much cleaner.
Yeah, somebody used to say that I used to drink with. They're like, hey, you guys want water? He's like, fish have sex in water. I'm not drinking water. Which is true. It's fun. It's a
this
stupid
beer
bar
is
joke.
Triple distilled. This is so much better for me.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think that's all great advice. Even people who aren't big drinkers, so to speak, but you go on vacation, your whole routine changes. You're in a new place. It sounds like there's a freight train going by. I don't know what's going on in the hallway right now out there. It sounds like, I don't know what the hell that was. But you're in a new place, and you have just, it could really apply to anything, mostly food and alcohol on vacations and trips, just getting into that, like, day to day, sleeping whenever you want. And this is what vacations are for. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that people should do this.
100%.
But it is tough coming back. And it's almost like that little bit of a buffer, whether it's the final day or my advice to people. Again, I'm coming from a place of privilege where I can do this now. But I always try to block off a day or so afterwards. It's everybody's tendency to book a trip and then well, let's see here. We could fly back on Sunday night. I don't have to be back to work till Monday morning. I'm like, well, do you really want to do that? It'd be nice to have a little bit of day in between. But But just speaking in terms of getting your mind right and getting back into life, because gosh, everybody hates that end of the trip. Like there's just that come down of like the last day, you're packing, you have to travel, and travel's not fun no matter who you are, unless you have a private jet. And even then there's steps involved in that, and then just thinking about coming back to reality. Why make it worse by being hungover or strung out on some kind of food coma? Because you really could ruin a vacation. Like who wants to come back from a relaxing vacation like that?
And to put that into just a larger context for people, because obviously that's the thing I work on. If you were to take everything that we've discussed today and just put it into one sentence, the sentence would be plan ahead. That's really what it boils down to. Whether it's you're at the bar and you just plan ahead in terms of how am I going to feel tomorrow, or whether you're planning the vacation and you plan ahead saying, how do I want the travel to be on my way back? Or plan ahead and say, what do I want to do when I get back from vacation? It's all just changing the scope of time, changing the time variable. But the only thing that really is changing there is the time variable in terms of the fact that you need to just step into your future and see what that future will be like. If you can just logically step into the future and use the past as a good predictor of the future, and not necessarily look at your past from 20 years ago and say that's going to be a true predictor of my future today. And if you don't know what you'll be like, go online and see what other people feel like after that. If you really don't know, right? It's like there's that concept of the wise man learns from other people's mistakes, average man learns from his own, and the fool never learns. It's like there is that concept of like other people have come up with this. And for example, Lee, I'm using you as an example here, you are stepping out into the limelight, sitting there saying like, these are the things that truly have worked for a person that's gone through all this hell. Listen to Lee. It's like, he has a wealth of advice about like how to actually deal with overindulgence because you had 20 years where you did a lot of that, right? So be the wise person and actually pay attention to it. For me, the thing that really makes a difference is I can tell you that the abuse I gave my body when I was 20, my body right now will beat the crap out of me if I were trying to do the same thing now. And it's just, and I know for a fact that I want not to get any worse. So because of that, when I plan ahead, I sit there saying, I'm going to do everything I can to strengthen my body today. So in 10 years' time, my body feels at least as good as now, if not better, because now is my rebuilding phase. I can really enjoy my adulthood. Everything is about being mature.
It doesn't get easier. We're not getting younger. But I want to add on a little bit. But your planning thing is also communicate with whoever you're with. If you're going on a trip with a spouse or family or whatever, because more than likely they don't want to feel crappy either on the way back. So maybe if it's just said out loud, like, hey, maybe on the last day we still have a really good time, but we dial it back. And it could be as easy as, I'm not talking about complete abstinence here. I'm not talking about don't have any drinks the last day, but just try to taper it down a little bit. I think that would have made or will make all the difference in the world. And if you come to agreement with the people around you, then it won't be so hard because then you're not one guy or one person, trying to not have a good time and, or whatever it is. And everybody around you is like doing shots and everything like, oh crap. So I think if you're open about it and you communicate with whoever you're on a trip with, more than likely they'll be like, yeah, you know what? I don't want to feel like shit either on the way back. So why don't we all agree that doesn't mean we can't go out for lunch on the last day and have a couple drinks. It doesn't mean it has to be like we're doing yoga and meditating all day, but don't make your last day your big night. How about that? How about you agree that the big night's going to be the night before the last day. There we go. We just solved it. We just solved all the world's problems right there. That's
Amen.
it.
Right there, brother.
Yeah.
I do want to say one more thing about that. This should actually be a topic for a completely separate discussion. But like the one thing that happens when you go on vacation is sometimes for a lot of people, the people pleasing tendency comes out, right? They're all drinking and I don't want to be the person sitting out of the crowd, right? So what ends up happening is even though you'll feel bad, you don't want to feel left out or you don't want to miss out on the fun that they're having or whatever it is. And the thing I'll say about that is it's back to that concept of being mentally mature. If you have true friends, they're not going to care whether you drink or not. And the truth is when people around you get drunk and you're not just being like just a lame ass person, whatever it is, you're going to have a great time. Not once during our trip did you guys care whether I drank or not, right? If anything, I feel like you even complimented me for not drinking and I was having a great time with you guys, right? It's like if you're with the kind of people that are going to make you feel bad for your decisions, the thing I'll say is that's a great time to assert your boundaries and just sit there saying, I'm going to feel crap and I don't want to feel crap. Or really just even pay attention to the fact of like, are these the people I want to go out on vacation with in the first place? And you sometimes start realizing the fact that some of your largest problems are the fact that you're just surrounded by people that aren't really the kind of people that you genuinely want to be around, the kind of people that genuinely move you towards who you want to be. And that is a big thing to understand as you start growing up, to actually, as you start evolving as a human being. one of the most important things that you can have is have a healthy community surrounding you that allows you to become the person that you were meant to be.
Well said. Couldn't have said it any better. Well, we've got a lot of exciting stuff coming up, people. We've got some courses we're putting together. They'll be very actionable courses dealing different types of addiction, chronic pain. Those are in the works right now. We've got some new retreat things in the works, some offerings and packages. We have a lot of content surrounding that on the trip, and that'll be released here as soon as possible. So I have to throw one more thing in, though. I want to point out, and I'm not going to mention any names, Chris, but the youngest person on the trip was also the most tired and wanted to go to bed earliest. So it still should be some credit towards us. We hung in there. We're the two oldest people on the trip. So anyway, thanks again, everybody. Thanks for liking, subscribing. Please leave comments below if you have any questions or if you want us to address anything. And as usual, every time we get into a show, we think of 5 more things we should talk about. So we'll happy to, if you're listening to this or watching this, drop a note, say, hey, I like what you guys said here. Please expand on it. And we'll catch you next time, everybody. To be continued.
Thank you guys so much. Thanks, Lee.
Hey everyone, it's Lee. Just one more thing before you go. Ever wondered how journaling could help change your life? You can find out by downloading the Emotional Alchemy Journal from the link in the description. It's a powerful tool for deep self-reflection, and it's completely free. And if you're looking to connect with Ori and learn more about how he can help you, visit his website at OriGoldstein.com. A link will also be in the description. Until next time, keep challenging the chaos within, be a little kinder to yourself, and let's continue to evolve together.